The music industry is cooked. It's no secret, man. AI-trained algorithms drive mainstream music listening. Underground artists have to fight 10 times as hard to get noticed. And the worst of all for a real music head, the concept of an album is dying. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of mainstream rap albums have ceased any idea of a concept throughout the album, and in turn became glorified playlists with 20+ songs farming streams. Ironically, I think more people than ever are tuning into albums, but the formula they calculate sales with makes you think that sales are declining. Anyway, this has forced artists to front-load albums with what they think are the best tracks, starting the album off in an explosive way to hopefully attract your attention so you'd listen to the full album. And the outcome of this is that the 2020s have become the decade of the album intro. We're officially closer to 2030 than we are to 2020. So it's time to reflect on some of this decade's best intro tracks and how those resulted in setting the bar for some of the most memorable albums of the decade. I'm going to be talking about songs that are listed as track 1 on the album, just to keep things simple. However, I know there are some albums that kick off with skits and the true intro track is track 2. So shout out to the Forever Story and the Fall Off. I still love you guys. I'd really appreciate supporting this video with a like, a share, a comment. Running a short form channel makes these long form videos difficult to even push through, and the Bzzzt doomsday clock is seconds away from midnight. Let's just say that. I'm gonna try and do these chronologically so you can just skip to the timestamp of whatever year you want to hear me talk about, starting with 2020. I know that year was terrible and uncertain, but it was almost overshadowed by how much quality music came out in 2020. It felt like there was a lot of competition between artists, with no one going on tour or performing. Like, what else are you gonna do but put your best foot forward in the studio? And a bunch of them kicked off their albums in a very strong way, maybe most notably Lil Uzi Vert on Eternal Atake. The whole world was waiting on Uzi. At this point, it's been years of hyping up this project after Love Is Rage 2, and while the album isn't Uzi's best in my opinion, I know a lot of you would disagree, it's probably the best way Uzi's kicked off a project in general. Baby Pluto is just this immediate slap of futuristic trap. It has a great build up too. It set the energy off on a long awaited project, and it's still the most memorable track on the album. Switching gears towards Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist Grammy nominated album Alfredo, easily one of the best aging albums of the current decade. And as I'm recording this video, the intro track 1985 is almost having like a little bit of a viral moment on TikTok. It's like a collective realization on how Gibbs hasn't missed in like 15 years, and it's a testament to the incredible ear Alk has. Bernie Mac's vocals leading to a guitar sample from like a Uruguayan band. Also gotta give a shout out to one of the most underrated albums from 2020 summer, Amine's Limbo. Amine has nowadays steered more so towards psychedelic summery bops, but Limbo, and especially the intro track Burden, showed immense growth from Amine both lyrically and just maturity wise. It's a very 2000s Kanye influenced track, especially with that chopped up sample. I need another album in this vein from Amine. And then there's this project from 2020 that still holds up somewhere in my top 10 of the decade, Run the Jewels 4. LP's production on this album can just be described with one word: revolutionary, both in messaging and in the way it sounds like nothing else. Man, the intro track Yankee and the Brave is one for the ages. The way Killer Mike comes in is insane. Mike and L always sound like they're in the middle of like a high-speed car chase. And then there's my final pick for 2020, and you're lying to yourself if you don't accept the greatness of this project, or at least the intro track. It's Rockstar Made off of Cardi's Whole Lotta Red. Single-handedly made rage a thing in mainstream hip-hop. He redefined the genre, his own image, and the way people anticipate and listen to projects nowadays, for better or worse, with one release. Even if I don't like a lot of the music this album was inspired, I'd be remiss to not acknowledge how crazy this drop was. I'm sure there are some more 2021s I didn't mention, so feel free to drop it in the comments, because I couldn't fit all of them. As we move on to 2021. 2021 was a fun and memorable year for me as the world started opening up again. And a lot of my personal favorite artists dropped albums this year, with a lot of them still being in my top 10 of the decade. Shout out to J. Cole with The Off Season, man. Still his best project in terms of being both interesting and relatively concise. And 95 South was such a crazy song for him. He came back really witty and confident after being relatively absent from the game. Then there's my favorite group that I miss the most, Migos. A lot of people didn't enjoy this album, and I get it. You kind of have to be a real diehard Migos fan to love it. Chemistry was something special considering this ended up being their final project together. But I will argue to death with anyone saying that Avalanche isn't an amazing track. That shit was insane with that Temptation sample. Crazy. And then there's Trippie Redd, who I think has definitely fallen off heavily in the 2020s, which is weird because he was relatively cutting edge when he broke through. And this album, Trip at Night, was a good blend of pop, rap, rage, and trap. Just listen to the intro track Molly Hearts if you haven't. Baby Keem's debut album didn't grow on me as much as I expected it to, but it was very fresh for the time it came out, particularly the intro track Trademark USA. Each of the different sections of the track showcase the different style Keem is able to do. It's a great tone setter for his career. Can't go talking about 2021 without mentioning CLB by Drake. I know this album isn't anyone's favorite Drake album, but mine apparently. I do think it's overhated, especially how middling his releases have been since. But I think we can all agree that Champagne Poetry is one of his best intro tracks. Sir Baudelaire from Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler deserves a huge shout. It's a great kickoff to that project. You're immediately steeped into how lavish and unrelatable that project is in like an interesting way. And shout out to West Side Gun for inspiring this album and this track specifically. And finally for 2021, I have my favorite album of the decade so far. Some of y'all know it. And the track is Bzzzt from Brockhampton's Roadrunner. It just has everything that makes a great BH track, especially because this came after they blew up with Sugar. With how soft that song is, contrasting it with Bzzzt. It's funny, fiery, it's energetic, it's emotional, crazy Danny Brown verse, and that music video is peak. Anyway, don't get me yapping about Roadrunner. It's time to go to 2022. This was an oddly therapeutic year for a lot of our favorites. Ton of all-time great albums with some amazing intros. For example, Pusha T's It's Almost Dry. The half Ye, half Pharrell produced album was a very like novel idea. Kind of just a flex if you think about it. Overall, I preferred what Ye did on the album, but I can't deny how good Pharrell's production of Brambleton was. That creepy ass beat and every bar Pusha spits almost like cuts like a knife. It's a chilling track. I love that shit. Kendrick blew my mind when Mr. Morale drop. It's crazy how rarely that album's talked about nowadays, when for his listeners, his fans, it's easily his most important work, with how it can affect everyone individually in different ways too. United in Grief is such a risk of a song, especially it being the intro. It's genuinely weird and kind of unsettling, hitting this Tech 9 chopper flow, the way he breaks his character down from this savior he's become to be known as, and to confessing that he's actually kind of like a piece of shit. I get this is the idea that he explored throughout the entire album, but it's summarized really well in the intro track. A similar but bit different experience was Denzel Curry's Melt Session #1 off of Melt My Eyes. This became by far Denzel's most personal album, and the intro track set the tone. I really get goosebumps reading the lyrics to this one. I was taken aback by how honest Denzel was. And there's one more for 2022 I have to mention, and it's not rap, I'm sorry. The song is Concrete Jungle from the band Bad Omen. I discovered this album way after it dropped, but this song just kicks ass. It's a great mixture of a vibe and energy. This whole album's pretty solid. I guess the irony is, as much as I talk about rap, it's not the only thing I listen to, but that's all you guys probably would care about hearing. Maybe one day I'll make a short about how Serbian folk music inspired me. Anyway, let's move on to 2023, which in retrospect was probably the weakest or maybe least memorable year in the decade so far, at least for rap releases, because I wonder why. Maybe it just pales in comparison with how crazy and creative the previous years were, or how insane 2024 was. That shit was nuclear. Also, it was the shittiest year of my life. I don't mind reminiscing on the music from this year, even though I tend to avoid listening to projects that remind me of that summer specifically, but let's keep going. Yeah, anyway, the most shocking release of the year by far was Lil Yachty's Let's Start Here. I know it's not really rap either, but I can't believe someone who barely showed any artistic range for like 7 years came out with this shit. This ambitious, psychedelic, captivating experience. The Black Seminole specifically, that song is an endeavor for Lil Yachty, an all-time endeavor. I wish he got recognized more for what he did on this project. Then there's JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown Scaring the Hoes. Admittedly, a project I do not revisit at all, except for the intro track, Lean Beef Patty. Off the wall, ridiculous song. I wonder if these two will collab again. I know they're on their own paths, and JPEG Mafia is a bit of a diva nowadays, and Danny Brown's on stage dancing with trans women, having the time of his fucking life. Not too different of experiences when you think about it. The Grammy-winning album of this year, Michael by Killer Mike, has this anthemic intro, Down by Law. It's hard to listen to this song and not feel energized and inspired. It's such an infectious track. Mike sounds like he's commanding an army into war. I also remember one of the highlights of the summer was Lil Uzi dropping Pink Tape. That was actually around the time that What's the Buzz started growing for the first time for real. Flooded the Face was like my morning alarm every day, basically. It kind of expanded on that typical futuristic alien-like Uzi sound that he usually goes for, but did it in a grand way to showcase how this album is like their biggest effort, or at least larger than the debut album. And then there's my personal biggest disappointment for that year, which was Travis Scott's Utopia. Man, Hyena is everything I want from a modern day Travis song, with that rodeo era influence here. He kind of baited us that the whole project would sound like this, especially with like the tweets he posted before. It's selfish for me to say that obviously artists should and are allowed to evolve, but yeah, that's one of the few songs that actually stood out on this project. Hearing it live at the first concert I got invited to go to, I got free tickets to, humble brag, it was certainly a special moment for sure. And then there was 2024. Honestly, this year didn't have that many picks for me in terms of intro tracks. Not to say there weren't any great albums, obviously. I'd like to give a shout out to Logic's Ultra 85, one of his best albums that kicked off in this ridiculous fashion with Paul Rodriguez. This 9-minute song where Logic is just flowing on top of a jazz rap beef, talking about the current state of music, his career thus far, and all that stuff. It's just interesting. I feel like the album didn't get the love it deserved. Also want to shout out one of the best singles of that year that ended up being the intro track to one of the best albums of the year. It's Samurai by Lupe Fiasco. Just a simply addicting boom bap track with Lupe's usual puzzle-like writing. But what ties this all together is probably his catchiest chorus since like the Food and Liquor days. Kendrick's 2024 needs no intro. What that man that year is probably never going to be repeated again in the history of rap. And starting his Victory Lap album with one of his darkest sounding intros, Whacked Out Murals. Wasn't expect going at everyone that's betrayed him in some way and how fed up he's become after this era. It's a fantastic time capsule of a track. Still one of my biggest regrets of not doing a live stream listening to that album. And I feel similarly about my favorite intro track of 2024. It's coming off of Tyler the Creator's Chromacopia, Saint Chroma. This was the first album that dropped after my pretty messed up surgery in 2024, and it inspired me so much to create content after. You can still like hear my lisp in some of those videos. Man, I just wanted to talk about this album so much, and it had me so excited for the album. And believe me, hearing it live was life-changing. And now let's talk about 2025. For the home stretch of this video, I think there's gonna be way less choices simply due to albums not growing on me as much. There hasn't been enough time, or it's indicative of perhaps a little bit of a downswing we're going through, at least in memorability. I don't know. Some repeat offenders on this one. I wasn't gonna mention Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist with 1995 here, as I feel like that song in comparison to 1985 is not as good, even though plucking feathers off an eagle is one of the best analogies to selling coke I've ever heard in my life. We also see the return of Mr. Tyler the Creator with Don't Tap the Glass. I wasn't big on revisiting this project at all until recently, when I heard Big Pope playing while I was shopping for clothes. I just think that Pharrell feature ties this whole song together and makes it as good as it is. Book of Daniel from Danny Brown's Stardust is this heartfelt recap of his life. Crazy hearing Danny Brown make a positive song after so many years. It just made me so happy that he's doing better in life, because he's always felt like a genuine, pure soul, just kind of like took a fucked up path in life at some point. And there's probably the big album of 2025. It goes to Clips, Let God Sort 'Em Out. The Birds Don't Sing is probably the only song on this list I cannot listen to in any circumstance. It's too hard to digest the subject matter of that song. Parental loss is like my biggest fear. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Gorgeous track though. And just looking through 2025 albums, I want to quickly give a shout out to SD Kid and the song 4 Raws. That tape was whatever, but that song fucking bangs. And we made it to the current year, which is 2026. To keep it real, so far have not been floored by basically anything that's come out this year, despite there being some very solid projects. Not hip hop again, but Pixelated Kisses by Joji is one of the best ways to start a comeback album I've ever heard. It's just so explosive and intro worthy. He crushed this. Don Toliver did his thing with E85. I don't even know why I'm mentioning this song, because the album stinks and I haven't listened to that song in months. I'm kind of LARPing right now just to make 2026 seem a little better. And then there's an album that I literally checked out today during my fuck ass walk, my mental health walks that I talked about earlier. It's Kenny Mason's album. He kind of blew me away with the first half of this project. The intro, Bull Killer, has this insane beat switch, and I love the line where he says, "Fuck your opinion, bitch, they govern what you get to see." Woo. And of course, you can't talk about 2026 intros without mentioning Blackberry Marmalade off of Vince Staples' Crybaby. I love this new direction for Vince. He's the definition of an artist just trying things to see what works, and he gives a genuine shot to whatever he's attempting. The song is addictive and catchy and important, and a powerful way to start off a project that's pretty politically charged. And like I said, there's a bunch of albums throughout all of these years that have great track twos, but I kept this video to just the intros. Let me know which ones you guys liked. I put all these songs actually in a Spotify playlist you can check out. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully there's some more great intro tracks in the rest of the decade. What's the buzz is out. I don't even do that outro anymore.